It's quite a challenge to think about exactly what I should give you to orient you before you read the first book of the Odyssey, because, well, the author would have begun in the exact right place for him. And he begins with the words, "Tell me about a complicated man." And then we don't hear so much about Odysseus in the first book of the Odyssey. So there's a little bit of a contradiction maybe in terms of how it begins. And I think that would be the key framing idea that I would suggest you look at when you read the first book of the Odyssey. In many ways, it will be the hardest book you read because you'll need to get used to the poetic style. You'll need to get used to the Greek names with which you may not be familiar. And you'll start to get to know the characters and form some ideas about them. And Homer very intentionally starts right in the middle of this epic cycle and right in the middle of the story. And so if you feel a bit disoriented at the reading of the first book, that's totally understandable, and I think that that's actually a bit intentional. But if we think about complications and we think about contradictions, I think one thing I'd like to ask you to be on the lookout for in the first book is the distinction between truth and fiction. So just see if you can notice when the poet makes it clear that a character is telling the truth and when the poet makes it clear that a character is lying. And let us begin our fictional story about a real war. Let's begin that study by thinking about truth and fiction. And so at the end, you might even have some passages marked truth, fiction. And we'll see if that tension, which the poet begins with, carries through successfully. But I think that's a good grounding for your first reading of the first book. So keep that in mind, and I look forward to hearing what you think.